And as we move on to the probes and the choices of what we use and their different frequencies and what that means, why a high frequency probe, why a low frequency probe, animals are a good way to understand the differences in different frequencies of sound. Another good example is if you go to the club and you're outside the club, someone rolls up in their tinted window, Trans Am. What's a cool car these days? I don't know, like a Escalade or something, right? And they're playing. They got the lights on low and they're playing loud music. And as they pull up, with the windows up, all you hear is what part of the music? The bass, right? Penetrance. So that low frequency sound is always going to have better penetrance. It's always going to be the thing that I'm vibrating a molecule here, and the next molecule I'm going to vibrate is over here. And I can pass through substances to do that. High frequency sound, that's I'm going to vibrate a molecule here and a molecule here and a molecule here and a molecule here. If I hit a barrier, I'll vibrate some stuff in that barrier and I won't make it through. So then bass is coming through the car, and then the person inside wants to talk to someone and they roll down the window and comes through, that was blocked before, right? So that's the high frequency, low frequency affects your penetrance through substances. And animals know this, like a whale uses a very low frequency sound and talks to other whales hundreds of kilometers away, if not thousands of kilometers away. That whale can't hear the bird in the tree that's using high chirping noises. And then think about what those sounds are like. That bird is producing very fine oscillations in the sound it produces. It's putting a lot of high resolution differences in tone and pitch that happen over microseconds that we can hear. Other birds can hear like way more information than that we can, but it just can't get hundreds of kilometers away. So low frequency sound is just going to give you these big, like, low rumblings that don't contain that much for us differences per second in information, but they can make it very far distance. And so there's always this trade-off. If you have excellent resolution, you're vibrating all of these molecules and you're getting all of this information back, and you can create a beautiful picture from all that information, you just can't get very far into tissue. And if I can get very far into tissue, just can't have this perfect crystal clear view of all these little details going on.
So is the curvilinear probe kind of a good compromise between the two?
Generally, I mean, I'd say we just haven't got to the point yet where we have a one probe solution, and people would use a high frequency linear and then a choice between a curvilinear and a phased array. And this is just a simple cartoon telling you about these ideas of reflection and attenuation, how a substance, because we talk about the qualities of the beam a lot, but what about the qualities of the tissue? Different tissues have different qualities in terms of, I let the beam through and I don't reflect, but I attenuate, suck out all of its energy and amplitude as it goes through. Or there's some substances that reflect, some attenuate a lot, others that reflect, some don't attenuate that much. So we'll sometimes talk about different tissues in terms of those qualities, the quality of the tissue itself. And then you've seen me do this for the probe face a bunch, talking about, oh, the probe face is just this linear line that moves up and down like this. But if you open up an ultrasound probe, these are what you find. You find a whole bunch of different arrays of crystals, different faces in different directions. It used to be that, like, the innovation was we'd create this one probe where instead of one face, we'd put a whole bunch at angles to each other, at phased angles to each other. So you have an array of faces at phased angles, and we call that the phased array. Every probe now is a phased array. And what the probes are really doing is not boom, and I shut off and listen. It's boom over here and I shut off and listen, then boom over here, then boom over here, and I'm processing, like, could that be side lobe coming back from here, which there's a ton of, like, high-tech, multi-face reconstruction going on. We can always think about it in the simple way of one vibrating speaker going into the body. And we'll talk about the probes with this letter and number convention, where we'll have a linear probe that if you were talking to the vendor, you'd say, hey, my L12.5 is broken. Send me a new L12.5. L for linear phase, 12.5 for 12 megahertz down to 5 megahertz. Why we did it that way instead of L512, nobody knows, but that's the naming convention. The letter tells you something about the face of the probe. The numbers tell you the megahertz range. So you'll see on our machines, we have some L95s, we have some L25s. It's just the range of frequencies that probe can produce. And then if you look at these next two, you've got the C41 and the P42. So when I talked about how people make a choice between a curve, a linear, and a phased array, you're not really often choosing between the frequency ranges. Sometimes they'll be different than this, and they'll extend a little more in one direction or the other. But they're all in kind of like 2 to 5 range. So it's more you're choosing the face. How wide do I want that face to be of my probe? And we've elected here to go with the smaller probe face, easier for cardiac imaging. When you start to do a lot of abdominal imaging and you switch to using the curved array that's on the new on handles, the Z1 Pro, I'd be like, oh, I love it way more than I do the phased array. And then you'll try to do a cardiac with it. Oh, this is so frustrating. But the other thing that slide is showing you is just what structures in the body we use what probe for. So there's the linear doing superficial vessels. There's a curved doing a kidney. There's a phased array shooting into a heart with a large effusion around it. So deeper structures, lower frequency probes. Other conventions we need to go over beyond brightness and darkness and hypoechoic and hyperechoic. We're going to talk about the orientation that we're holding the probe in a lot. Are we cutting an organ in a short axis or long axis? That's the term I like to use the most. I use it for the whole human body, nice and simple. I'm doing that short axis cut of the arm. I don't have to say like I'm doing a mid-axial abduction, like, too much. But you'll certainly encounter people that they don't like to use the term longitudinal, they like to use the term sagittal. There's all these other ways in which we can express things. I think you'll be well served if you talk about the short axis of the kidney, the long axis of the kidney, and not a semi-oblique coronal probe position.